The Halo games haven't been resonating with audiences in recent years like they did in the past. A lot of people are thinking this is probably the catalyst as to why the company decided to rebrand themselves from 343 Industries into Halo Studios, kind of as a means to separate themselves from the games that didn't do too well with audiences while also still embracing what people know them for, which is the Halo series. But following this rebranding, a lot of people were taking to social media and going online to try to figure out information about this new team behind Halo. And they weren't really happy with the results and weren't shy about making their voices heard on that matter, because it looks like the company is pretty much just going to embrace DEI like a bunch of other companies did to their detriment. And a lot of people were pointing this out online, but there's people at Halo Studios that are actually upset about the fact that people are looking into the team working on the games. We got this article from That Park Place, which is talking about a post from the senior community manager for Halo Studios, and this is what he has to say about it. Halo Studios senior community manager John Janosik implied that gamers are racist after a number of them began raising questions regarding a number of the company's employees' embrace of identity politics. He made the statement on his own personal X account, so it's not like he's speaking on behalf of Halo Studios with it. Yet he is the senior community manager. He understands how this stuff works, so I think it is reasonable for someone to assume, even though he's not necessarily speaking on behalf of the company specifically with this, since he is the senior community manager and he's speaking about the company, then I think it is safe to assume that what he's saying here is a sentiment that's also shared by the Halo Studios. So here's a screen grab of what he was saying, and this is what it says. In nearly a decade of serving in public-facing role in gaming, I've never had my passion or work experience questioned due to my race, religion, gender, etc. I could believe that that's the case, but has he also been hired specifically because of those things? I don't necessarily know all the answers to that, but I can see that he's a white guy. If he's a straight white guy, I assume that he wasn't hired because specifically he's a straight white guy. People only question the identity of people involved with these projects when they are hired specifically because of their identity, because if they're hired because of their identity, well, then that's the studio saying, we think this is the best person for the job because this is what their identity is. And if the public is really questioning, is that necessary for the quality of the game? We get pushed back and get called ists and phobes and other things like that when the studio themselves are the ones who brought up these people and said, like, no, we're hiring them because of this reason and you can't say anything about it. If you can't question it at all, then all they're doing is trying to use these various groups as a shield. And to me, that's actually pretty disgusting. Not even after game delays or server outages when I've come out on the front lines as a bearer of bad news. Sadly, it's no secret that my experience is far different than many game developers, especially when compared to devs that happen to come from marginalized communities. And it's like I was saying before, were these people hired specifically because they're the most qualified person for the job, or were they hired because they're the most qualified person who happened to check off the box that the company was wanting to check off at that time? Because if that's the case, then I think it is reasonable for the public who doesn't really care about those sort of things to question, like, well, are we going to have a good product now? Because they're not necessarily hiring the best people for the job. They're just hiring the best people who are in a small applicant pool. This contrast shows that we all have work to do to continue making gaming and game development a better space for people to do their best work. I appreciate how supportive our community has been over the years, and I'm glad to see that continue to this day. Please continue to do your part, practice kindness, be human. Here's the actual post that he made on X, and naturally, as you can imagine, he locked the replies to this, so you have to look at the quote tweets in order to see what people actually think about it, and it's really not that good. Halo was infected with woke-ish and representation cancer. Say goodbye to a possible good game. I don't know what game he is referring to, but this is the natural and logical consequence of DEI/affirmative action. If people were hired based on competency alone, people wouldn't question their competency based on their identity. 100% agree with that. It's become modus operandi attacking your player base because they won't bow to your narrative that shouldn't be inserted into games. Franchises go to die on the hashtag DEI, hashtag woke hill. Typical community manager, this time for Halo, makes some public statement and then disables replies except for his friends. He's complaining about the massive customer pushback against the woke and incompetent activists Microsoft has hired to lead the Halo Studios. And that's what a lot of people were getting at when they started looking into the new Halo Studios, because they found this person, Melissa Boone, who is has the title Chief of Staff for Halo Studios. This is a screen grab of her LinkedIn profile, complete with pronouns, she, her, and most notably, a big rainbow banner in the background. Now, it was a while since I graduated from college, but my professor, I remember saying to scrub your social media accounts, telling all of us you need to scrub your social media accounts because employers look into that sort of thing. So you don't want to post any stuff that could be controversial or could raise some eyebrows there or show that you might be somewhat difficult to work with. I mean, things have really changed since then because this is her LinkedIn account. And they told us specifically, you need to get a LinkedIn account and make it look professional, treat it like another version of your resume, so to speak. But she posts a big rainbow flag, just not making it shy. This is her political stance and this is her agenda sort of thing. And if she feels that this is appropriate for a workspace, then I think it stands to reason that a lot of people would also assume that she's going to insert this type of stuff in the Halo games, or she's going to try to push for this kind of stuff to be inserted in the Halo games because that's kind of what she's about. Scrolling further down, it says that she actually has more experience within the gaming industry to try to push DEI and other stuff like that. Boone's experience at Microsoft as a principal UX research manager was to be keenly invested in research on diversity and inclusion design efforts to bring more diverse voices into the games industry. And if you go on the Microsoft's own website in the About section for Melissa Boone, it has this to say about her. She also leads research in diversity and inclusion and accessibility across Xbox's games and experiences with a focus on making Xbox a place where everyone has fun. And then it goes on to say she is an adopter of the Hispanic racial slur, Latinx. Her research in public health focused on how people's social interactions influence their risk for HIV and substance abuse, particularly with African Americans and Latinx folks, LGBTQ plus people, and women. And I think it's kind of funny, the idea, okay, we're going to need to study substance abuse and HIV contraction, so let's look at Black people and gay people for that one. I don't know if that was necessarily intentional, but it just kind of comes across as funny to me. And this is only one person working at Halo Studios. We already have the community manager on board with this sort of things. We have the chief of staff there. This article also points out one of the producers also sharing similar views too. So a lot of people were thinking like, okay, if this is Halo Studios and the type of people they're hiring, then does that mean that they're just going to be putting identity politics at the forefront of everything over quality of content? And maybe the people that are working on this are going to sincerely try to push quality content or do the best that they can do. It's just a question of whether these people are actually the best suited for the job, because one of the things when it comes to Microsoft is they haven't been shy about just trying to hire people based off of the check boxes that they can check off, because we have this run right here that came out from a couple months ago, because at this time there was word that they're getting rid of some of their DEI staff. And I myself was wondering, does this mean they're trying to shift focus and do away with it? Because I've heard that a lot of companies have been doing away with DEI staff members, but they're also just rebranding the departments and stuff like that entirely. But in the case of Microsoft, they got rid of them because basically they had more than enough staff members on hand in order to push DEI. So they got rid of some of the teams that were doing that sort of job. And this is kind of some statements that Microsoft put out in relation to that. Microsoft's diversity and inclusion commitments remains unchanged. Jeff Jones, another Microsoft spokesperson, told HR Dive, "Our focus on diversity and inclusion is unwavering, and we are holding firm on our expectations, prioritizing accountability and continue to focus on this work." I'm going to be kind to Halo Studios for a moment here, because we don't know with 100% certainty that the next Halo game is going to be crap. The only thing that we do know is the people working on it were hired because of their identity politics and not necessarily because they're the most qualified for the job. Now, it's possible that they could still produce a good game free of identity politics. They're kind of putting that on the back burner and not really focusing on it with the game. But I have my doubts about that. I think the reason these people are hired is because they're trying to insert that stuff in the game. And Microsoft has not been shy about the fact that that's the kind of stuff they're trying to push with some of the products that they're pushing out right now. We'll just have to wait and see whether it actually seeps its way into the game and diminishes the quality of it as a result of all this, because, well, we've seen in recent years, more recently, particularly with Ubisoft, they were embracing identity politics, and even with that ESG money that they get as a result of it, it's not enough to save the studio. So maybe they're going to produce another Halo game. They're going to have it steeped in identity politics. It's going to flop, and then they're actually going to have to restructure and figure out what they're going to do in order to try to save their company. I'm not saying save Microsoft particularly, just Halo Studios, or they're going to try to rebrand and go back to making Halo games that fans actually like with it, or they're just going to double and triple down on all their decisions until Halo is just nothing more but a husk of its former self with literally dustborn levels of players. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.